Mikko walks in with a notebook thick, says Copilot's ready, let's build it quick. Blueprints fly like a barroom trick. Coffee's cold, but the logic's slick. He slams the table, maps unfold, a roadmap shining like hammered gold. I say, buddy, that plan looks bold. He grins, damn right, let's break the mold. We're stitching dreams with caffeinated code, loud as a tractor on an icy road. Hey, we're planning in Copilot Studio. Mikko barking orders like a rock rodeo. Shots on fire, system set to go, and every new tweak makes the rafters blow. Hey, raise your mugs, let the deadlines flow. Tonight we're kings of the overflow. Hey! Hey! He pencils arrows like a general's plan. Says automate that. If we can, we can. I pitch a feature. He slams a pen. Too simple, needs zest. Think again, my man. We shuffle modules like a deck of cards. Debug philosophy and metaphors hard. But once it clicks, it hits like stars. A neon chorus in junkyard bars. Mikko, my friend, this is either genius or illegal. He winks, perfect market is feasible. We wield our thoughts like steel and snow. Sparks flying bright in the afterglow. Hey, we're planning in Copilot Studio. Blueprints dancing like a late night rodeo. Stack tall in a wild tableau, but Mikko keeps time with a thunder blow. Hey. Slam the drum, let ambitions grow. Our roadmap's drunk and stealing the show. Flow. Watch the chaos align.
We toast to errors.
Each one divine.
Schedules wobble.
Yet somehow shine.
A circus of logic.
On deadline time. Yelling forward through the radio. Our plan in chat shakes the status quo. A rebel procession through falling snow. Hey, last call rings, but we still glow. Two mad engineers in a cosmic show. Blueprints settle. Night grows thin. Mikko smirks. Tomorrow we plan again.
My name is Karuhan, and I have joined here with my co-host Buland. Today we are talking about critical topic that separates successful AI implementations from costly failures. Proper planning in Copilot Studio. Thank you to our guest Mikko Koskinen.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really interesting and I'm excited to be here today to talk about one of my favorite topics on agent planning and conversation with the agents, for sure.
That's awesome. And we can't be more happy to have the right expert, the perfect expert today to guide through this. Can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah. Sure. So I'm coming from Finland, working in the company called Sulava. I'm a principal consultant in our Copilot and AI team, actually. Been working with the Copilot Studio since the beginning, so a couple of years now. But I have a longer background myself in Microsoft technologies. So I've been doing, software development for 20 years already. So starting as a software architect and developer, actually together with Karuhan here, when we were still, discussing about on-prem SharePoint. That's where I started, like 2007 or something like that. But then I jumped into the Power Platform and low-code side 7 or 8 years ago. And in one way, it has been a quite natural, change or upgrade now also on the AI and agent world based on that.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, then what was the reason you then dig up with the Copilot Studio? What's the point?
Yeah, we started, or I started to get interest about the Copilot service. The actual tool in Office 365 or Microsoft 365. And we already knew when the first versions came up that, okay, only having a chat is not enough for the actual business use cases. Back then, we were discussing about extension and how to add maybe some type of flow for the Copilot service. But it came quite quickly to our notice also and under my radar that only creating a workflow and kind of asking a Copilot to run that workflow is not what everyone is needing. And Microsoft also brought up this agent idea, or in the markets, the agent came to the play quite quickly. So transforming from a chatbot type of solutions to a real using of LLM and generative AI. And that's how I started to investigate the Copilot Studio tools and Azure tools also for the extension purposes.
Let me ask you a provocative question here. So, especially for the people who are new to Copilot Studio, isn't that just another bot building tool?
That's how maybe I would say 1 year ago or early this year, how everything was looking, that it was only a bot chatting type of tool. And many people are still using it as a bot chatting tool. But we need to remember that nowadays there are these generative capabilities that are built in. And in one way, I think what I see people doing with the tool is more than just a chatbot. So they really understand that there's a real LLM behind the scenes, and they try to maybe build solutions that are not so, configured or workflow type of architectural plans or architectural solutions. So I think because people are quite used to use the chat capabilities, ChatGPT or Copilot, they really try now to do things with the Copilot Studio and agents in the same way. So that's a fascinating, way how everyone is already on top of these new capabilities. And I don't know how many actually even remembers that it was a chatbot tool earlier, only a few years ago.
I mean, still a lot of people remembers it and just name it as a bot, right? If you just go out, and especially if you talk to clients, they're not talking about agents. They're just talking about bots, right? So, and sometimes I have the impression that people are just, going deep dive into this and say, because they're hyped by Microsoft, just, connect it to any kind of data source and then you will get your answers. But I mean, that's not reality. A careful planning is here needed, right?
Yeah, it is. And the reality is that although there's an AI in between, only connecting some tool like Copilot Studio on top of some data, that doesn't build the conversational or build the capabilities that the makers are expecting automatically. AI doesn't help you there in one way, because you need to help the AI.
Yeah, you mentioned about enterprise data, identity or UI surfaces. Can you elaborate why touching these areas makes planning non-negotiable?
So I think the most important part to understand about the AI agents is that, like I said, if you only connected the agent to a data source, although it can understand that what the data is and what there is, in the knowledge sources, it doesn't know that what it should be doing with that information. And in many cases, especially with the Copilot Studio, what the people would like to do actually is to create a targeted agent for a specific purposes. So, for example, an HR agent or IT ticketing agent or something like that. And the fact is that you need to tell that to the agent so that only then it knows that, okay, I'm this type of, or I'm scoped to be this type of helper for the end user, and I have this data. Only if you tell that to the agent, you can actually make it functional in one way. And this is something what I see too often actually, that people are just putting the Copilot Studio on top of some data sources, and then they think that it starts to answer in a correct way, and then you get something out of it, and you think that it an hallucination, but in reality, it's just trying to please you in one way for that knowledge that it has.
Do you think this MCP server and RAG has changed stuff? At least I think it's a bit more smarter now, but still not quite smart. At least the MCP server, you have to put almost a SQL there for your question.
It has maybe, let's put it this way, it is changing the architecture behind the scenes and the capabilities that we have. Does it change too much the things that the end user is seeing? Maybe not. It's more for the developer side. Of course, it will bring up, a better user experience, better conversation, or answers to your questions. But the reality is that those are tools for the makers, which you should actually understand and take them in for your projects and use them. But I think there are differences that are you a pro code Copilot Studio developer or are you a citizen developer, and what are the capabilities? But that's in one way the thing that I really like with the Copilot Studio, that you can be on or coming out from both of the areas, either as a citizen developer or as a pro code developer, and you have all the tools and capabilities to use them. But it's always beneficial to understand also, for example, the RAG processing, and in many cases you need to do that. Even though you have some document in your computer and you are uploading that or pointing the SharePoint site to your agent, it doesn't necessarily help. There's a reason why there is this file syncing functionality in Copilot Studio to a Dataverse site, because it's one type of RAG system, of course.
You've mentioned a very interesting topic. I mean, that the user experience, right? At the end, the user expects the correct answer when you're just typing something in or expect the agent something to do. So this is with MCP and all that kind of things. This is an improvement which happens in the background. That means before we come to that stage, we need to have a proper planning to this, right? And the proper planning is just not only to decide what kind of large language model we're using in the background or what kind of technology, but also privacy and compliance. Is the company already ready for AI? Is there something done already? Can you give us some specific examples you have seen when you're just talking with clients about these kind of things?
Yeah, so one way, the planning always should be started without making too deep technical decisions and deciding. So starting from the end user or the users, actually, that's the first step. Of course, the data is also really important. What we see constantly when we are deciding agents currently is that first it sounds that the information is there. It's really easy to say that, okay, we have this and this type of system where we have data and we would like it to use that in the agent. But then when we start to dig a little bit deeper, we see that, okay, the data is not in SharePoint. It's in some third-party system, for example. There's no API for it, for example, or it's a highly sensitive data and we should be calling the information only based on the permissions that the end users has. And this is something which is really complex still nowadays. When there are no connections, for example, or ready-made MCP servers that we can leverage as a designer or maker. So it might take a lot more time to plan the integration side or making something securely available for the agents. But it's the same thing with SharePoint. There are too much data in SharePoints nowadays that we see. And then they think that, okay, now Copilot Studio or AI will help us and solve this issue. And that's not the reality. Then we start to do a proper planning in the SharePoint intranets actually to make the data available.
Yeah, I think many of the agents are like R&D. So I think, yes, planning is, but how would you advise people how to plan if you don't know actually what you're doing or how you're using the tools?
Let me share these one or couple of slides. So how we are approaching the planning. We've been running this type of agent factory programs or innovation sessions for hundreds of end users already at this point. And in the first workshop, we always sit down with the business users and we don't open Copilot Studio or Azure Foundry or any type of AI tool because we start to have a conversation with them. I think this is the first part to remember that we are talking about large language model and what it means that there's the word language in it. And agent really likes that you are using the language while you are designing it and when you are giving the information for it. So even though you have some specific information, for example, you need to start with the user and to understand that who is the actual user. Because what we've seen, for example, is that for a certain type of documentation or data source, when you think that what type of interaction the end users are having, there might be a difference in between different users or user groups that how they are using the information and the data. It's not only the role of the agent, but also that what type of interactions the end users are having and what are you expecting the agent to be answering. If you think really closely, there's nothing new in this. We've been doing the same thing already decades when we are building applications. And this is my most important message in one way for the planning, that you should not skip this section. AI can help you with this one. Open the ChatGPT and have a discussion, but you still need to take these couple of steps here, because only that way you are able to really understand the process. And the good thing is that nowadays you don't have to spend too much time for this anymore. We are not having like a months of planning or any type of architectural projects anymore, like we used to have with the SharePoint intranets, for example. We are only spending hours or maybe a day out of this, because the fact is that in the beginning, when we are starting the planning, everything seems really simple. Let's take an example here. I want to text something for a person. I need to send a message. The first time when we are discussing this with the businesses is that, okay, there's the text. Now I need to select Madison and I'm sending the information. But then when I'm asking that, okay, how did you come up into that point that the message is actually sent? And I'm asking the business owners and end users to really, write down the different steps, what is happening. The fact is that this might be the life. So, okay, I know a message that I want to send. I want to send that to a Madison. The next step is that, okay, the agent doesn't know who Madison is. How do I tell someone else that where a phone number for Madison is actually found? What are the steps that I need to take, etc., etc. So there's so many different states and twists and turns that are happening. But in one way, this is just a way of describing what maybe someone else is doing, and now we want an agent to do a similar type of activities. And we need to write this whole process and flow down in a little bit, at least or describe it at least with a couple of sentences. And that's the reason why we are having these different planning sessions and conversations.
Makes absolutely sense. So you already have some kind of a framework where you're just going, step by step through the process with your client. So this is really careful planning. But how much time, took it just, to put this all together? But because this is not something just is written down, is that based on your own experience, based on the experiences you have made with your company? How did you create that kind of a framework?
Well, this came only by doing things together with someone else. And I think that's really important, because when you start to create an agent, it's one way giving instructions to someone else. And that's how we started with our first use cases, or I started when I started to build my first agents, is that, okay, I understood it quite quickly that now I need to write something down. But it's always not easy to write a step-by-step guidance on what you are doing and what is the thinking mechanism behind the scenes when I'm doing something. So I think how we framed up this was only by working as a group with someone else. It's really beneficial to have someone, for example, even trying to mimic the process based on the instructions that you give it. Okay, are these actually clear? Are you able to understand what we are doing here? So, in one way, I think an HR team is really good on planning agent, because they have used to create a step-by-step guidance for the organizations, and that's exactly what you should be doing here.
I would like to stay here on this framework a little bit. So have you also implemented some kind of KPIs so you can measure the success based on the framework which you have just implemented with your clients?
Let's put it this way. we have some frameworks and KPIs that we are using. I would say that we are still in quite early stages here. It's quite simple things that we are measuring, like collecting feedback from the end users, thumbs up, thumbs down, type of things. What I see now in the organization is that maybe the first steps to calculate, for example, some type of revenue or return of investment is happening. But many organizations are still, investigating. So we are doing agents so that organization can understand that, okay, where the benefit might be. And on those cases, it's not, really key to find the correct KPIs other than understanding that is this actually working. But we see in some places where also that type of return of investment, tracking is done.
Do you think it's important to then track the output and develop further the agents, or just leave them be?
It is important, but it's also important to do some upfront planning for that one. In the slides, I also have the template side. Let's see if you can share the slide at this point. So there is a template that you need to maybe understand and use. So I would always do planning so that you are writing down at least a couple of examples on, okay, what do we expect that the end user is asking? What type of answer are we expecting to? And where is that information found? And you can also give this to the agent upfront in the instructions, because it helps the agent to work. But it's really important to track down also that what is the real life, what is happening. And you can see that information from the logs and analytics from Copilot Studio also, so that you can then fine-tune maybe the usage of the agent or add topics, for example, for certain use cases. But in many cases, what we see is that organizations are also building this type of ways how they are asking the real, feedback from certain user groups, not only through analytics, but making some type of queries for the use base, which is really good. This is something that we always wanted to do with the applications, but maybe organizations are not being willing to spend that time for it. But now we see that with the agents and Copilot usage, which is really nice.
Yeah, we have a thinking, because if you make a traditional software and it crashes, okay, it writes into the logs and it's an error warning or something. And I've seen your blog about doing, like, if you're using topics and the error handling. But if you are using AI, how you can track that it's crashing something if the user doesn't reply or give a response that, hey, now it didn't actually answer my question, or did it very funny?
Yeah, of course, there's no a right way to do that. In one way, you need to keep the conversation under control. There is ways how you can, for example, understand in the Copilot Studio that the answer was not correct, for example. You can fine-tune things with the topics and create like an error logging mechanism throughout the topic building side. In one way, unfortunate thing is that not all the citizen developers are capable of using these different techniques. There are these system topics that can do a lot of things, but too often I see that they are actually shut down because maybe the logic behind scene is, or how they are working, is not what the organization is expecting. But you should actually maybe spend a little bit time on planning that. Okay, what should we do when something goes wrong, for example? What is the correct way of handling that situation? Or how do we want that to be handled? Do we want to send a message automatically? Do we want to open a ticket to some system? Or do we want to, transfer the conversation to a live person, for example? Not seeing that too often, actually. Maybe a ticket or chief message is the most common one. But still, you need to plan those also. So that's one part of the planning. Don't plan only, use cases where everything goes okay. Also spend a little bit time to plan that, okay, what should we do when things are not working correctly? And that's quite often actually forgotten, these next steps or error handling type of situations.
This is a very good point. So, because when I'm talking with clients, if you want to go to more straightaway answers, we suggest and go more with topics. It's more user driven, right? So in that case, we know where the user flow is going. But then we just found out, or some clients are, complaining, it's so much work we need to put in. Where's the AI there? And that's why some also suggest put in AI, generative answers, but then you just don't know where the user flow goes. Now, Microsoft just has presented 2 weeks ago during the Power Platform Community Conference something which is called test evaluation.
Yeah.
So is this the right way to go, where we can have this some kind of generative answers more under control in the future?
I really hope. Of course, it's a new feature. We haven't had too much time to see that in real action. But it was, in the Copilot Studio kit, you already had this testing framework earlier. There are still places for that, even at the announcement. But I feel that it was a little bit too complex, at least for the citizen developers to use. It was a pro code tool. It still is a pro code tool, which we are using. But I really hope that this new feature will bring this type of testing idea and understanding for a wider audience. Because even so that they understand that, okay, I need to think this through. Because it's quite often that we need to help the clients a little bit, so that they will even, open an Excel and start to plan that what we are expecting to ask from the agent, because those are the steps that are often forgotten actually. And hopefully throughout these type of new features, people are starting to understand that, okay, I also need to plan these sections, because now it's a little bit easier to do that than before.
You have mentioned it already, the Copilot Studio kit, by the way, still a secret, because you can do a lot of these kind of things, has this testing evaluation there, but it's pretty complex, and just, you have to give in some kind of security keys there, client IDs, client secrets to configure to get it working. And when you work with authentication, boy, then it gets really complex as well.
Exactly. And we need to remember that many times the people who are making testing with today's agents, they are not professional testers. They are business people who has their real job in one way, that we are always fighting from the room in the calendar, that when are we having this planning, when we are asking people to test, etc. So we need to make things a lot easier, so that we can then have a masses of people to work with the agent and help us to build it. So that's why it's really, really nice to see these new tools, which are easier to use.
So basically, so when you are doing some kind of agents or bots that open to big crowd, it really needs like professional architecture and planning.
Most likely. Just as an example, last week we had a session with one bigger city here in Finland, where we had this type of innovation workshop, 4 hours of planning. And what we saw already in the middle of this workshop session is that maybe half or 2/3 of the use cases are already quite complex. So we were unable to even create a POC with Copilot Studio Lite version, for example, or even with the Copilot Studio, because they are quite complex. For example, we didn't have the data sources available. We needed integration to be done first, or some type of RAG processing before we are in the level that we create agents. So it's really nice to, in one way, see how quickly even business users are understanding that where the real value is. It's not in the connecting the agent to a simple, documentation and then starting to chat against it. That's not where the business value is. They are looking for already like a lot more. So that's why this type of hybrid approach to build these agents, it's already behind the scenes and behind the doors. That's the way how things will be developed in near future already. So combining the capabilities.
I mean, you're completely right. I agree completely with you. Because if you just look at the processes clients have built their business over years, the requirements became really complex. Just to build this, because their processes are complex. There's not that easy peasy, business, or a process which clients just have, and they try to bring this one-to-one, to the agent, and all hope that the agent is solving a problem that they have created. By the way, a lot of clients have created, because with a mess of data in the background. So I have seen last week during the AI show, AI tour in Frankfurt, a perfect example, a perfect show. And when they were demonstrating how good Copilot Studio is working, I was laughing a little bit, because they always used perfect data, perfect structured data. In over 15 years, I have never seen on the client side perfect structured data like this. Never. So it seems like a requirement to that agents be successful.
Exactly, because everyone knows that the most return of investment is coming out from those parts that are not, easy. Why to make a workflow for something that you are able to do in a couple of minutes by yourself? There's no point of that. But then, especially when the information is scattered around systems, or the documentation is really long and complex, that's where you will get the benefits. One thing that we are discussing with our clients quite often is that what type of targeting are you putting for the agent, and what type of expectations you have. We get quite often this type of request that, okay, build us an agent which is able to do something with the data in 100% correct way, always. And what I'm saying to them, that I don't even try at this point, because there's no point of that. But I can guarantee you that I can do that with the agent in 60% of the times, or against the 60% of the data. And then we start to think that, okay, is that actually enough? Depends. If you're talking about a time saving of 15 minutes, maybe it's not. But if a process where we are working with the agent is normally taking 5 days, and we are then taking 1.5 days off from the overall time, that's a significant, improvement already at this point. So in a one way, then making discuss with the client that, okay, I think there's a value of bringing the agent in, although we are not solving the whole, use case and problem at this point. Maybe we can do that in 6 months, but let's start with something at least.
I think that we will improve, but we will never reach 100%. Never. So that should be clear, and we should make it clear every time. I think even we will not reach 95 and 90%, because the reason is, impacted in the language. So I give you an example. So when I'm just talking with my wife, and my wife says like, "Oh, are we both getting old together?" and so on. And when I just said accidentally, yes. Then she thought only she was getting old, and she understand that it's something different, right? So in that case, but what I wanted to say is yes. So I wanted to say we both, but the context, was already said differently, understood differently. And when I'm just talking with the client, sometimes I'm just getting things like a table, with I've been logged out, and there are 27 entries in this, and they expect magically from Copilot Studio, from any kind of agent, hey, it should pick up the right one, exactly this one. So this is just not possible. So is there something with careful planning, how we can make it better if we just go more to the architectural, say, design then, how we can make it better? Is it only orchestration, prompt design? What are your tips and tricks, how you would, try to solve that kind of things?
Of course, throughout the prompt designing or instruction designing, that helps a lot, so that you start to write down the steps and the process, how the agent should be working. That's the first step that you need to do. In Copilot Studio, what I often see is that, and which is forgotten actually, is the description for the data and tools. So the agent doesn't know what SharePoint site it is or what there is inside that SharePoint site if you don't tell that to the agent. These are the first 2 steps in one way, that making sure that you are describing the process in the instructions in detailed enough level. And then you are describing also for the agent that what capabilities does it have. Example of this is that, okay, and also how it should be using the capabilities. We had one use case where we have contract. There was some work related instructions and laws that they wanted to create an agent where an end user is able to ask questions like, okay, how many days off do I have, etc. And it was really long document, and it was able to find the information. But what they didn't do in the instructions was to tell that, okay, inside this data source, there are different sections for different user teams or users in one way. That, okay, if you are a technical person, you need to find these and these sections on that data source. And if you are another user group, that the information is somewhere else. You need to describe that and tell that to the agent that you need to do things on that side. Other thing what we quite often do nowadays is to plan the overall process and tasking that the use case needs. And then we start to use a sub-agent actually behind there. So that and sub-agents or connected agents is responsible of different, more narrow use cases or operations. Or it might be an agent flow which is doing something, and there are prompting and other AI capabilities behind there. So that we are not only putting all the knowledge and all the tools to one agent and then hope that everything is working. You need to create structure also. And I think that's really nice that Copilot Studio has those structural, capabilities, but they are not used in an efficient way in many cases.
Yeah, I've noticed the same, that if you have like 4 areas of things and stuff, or categories of information, and then I had these topics and AI, and then the AI goes between my topics and it mixes up.
Yeah.
So do you think, is there some kind of limit how many categories you should have of information before creating multi-agent orchestration?
I really haven't actually tested that one. That is there some specific amount of information. In this use case, what I was discussing, that okay, we had that main contract that has the main information, but then we had these local contracts that were like fine-tuning the different regulations and rules. And in this use case, we went as a sub-agent that was only handling these local contracts. Because then what we saw is that it was more capable of staying, inside the limits that it should have. That it was only looking for this information or topic. It was finding the information to those contracts that we wanted it to actually concentrate on. We were trying to do this so that the main agent had all of the information as knowledge sources. There were not too many, only like 15 or 20 knowledge sources. But we got a lot more out of the efficient point of view when we started to use the sub-agents on those use cases. So I don't know, is there a certain limit out of that? You need to test things and to see that how the different changes is actually affecting on the quality.
How much time would you recommend on testing once you just have built this?
In a one way, what we see is that the first version, from the idea to a first testing phase, it's quite short actually. It might be only like 2 or 3 workshops, maybe one day of building something. But we rather start testing right away when the first knowledge sources are in. So at least half of the overall, time should, I think, be in some type of testing mode. That although you are maybe building the agent and the next versions, but someone should always be constantly testing that what there is happening. And especially if the knowledge sources are really large, there are so many different testing use cases that you need to go through. Hopefully these new tools will help us with this one in the future, but at least currently it's even sometimes even more time to make the testing than actually building the agent.
When I'm in workshops, I have always both sides. The ones who are very impatient and wants to deploy after a short amount of time, and then the ones who are always, pointing the finger and said, we need to discuss about governance, security, and all that kind of part. So if people really wants to say, oh, it seems to be ready, let's test it out, after 2 workshops, let's deploy it, see it, how it works and so on. So which side you're putting, yourself?
I'm more in the side of let's test it, but then comes the governance hat, on top of me. Every organization exactly should use the first time nowadays to understand the governance and understand that what does it mean when we are publishing the agent in the production or even for the testing. What I think is not the correct approach is that okay, the end user should not do anything before we have the full governance process written down and implemented. I see this also, let's put it this way, too often in one way. there are other. We have the Copilot Studio Lite version, for example. It's already secured in the built-in way, and I think every user should have an access for that, so that they can start investigating and understand what does it mean to build and use the agents. And there is always time to build the governance behind the scenes. Good thing is that now it's a lot easier to build the governance because we have a lot more tools there than maybe 6 months ago with these agents. We're starting to see patterns and best practices which are quite quick to implement. But of course, there's always things to go through and discuss in your organizational point of view. So in one way, starting the governance conversation, and at the same time give also the people a way of starting the learning path and investigation.
Do you think how much Power Platform governance model and Copilot Studio governance model has to do with each other? Is like Copilot Studio extending the Power Platform, or are they going to separate ways, or what do you think?
No, I think they are going hand in hand nowadays. But one important part, actually, what you need to remember is that it's not only Power Platform or Copilot Studio governance. Half of the agent governance is done in Microsoft 365 Admin Center nowadays. And what we also don't, or organizations don't, remember too often is that there is always these connections, and there are always these third-party services that will be needed when you are building the agent. And then comes the Azure type of governance side also into the mix. So this is why it's really important if you are new or you don't have the agent governance processes, is to have some partner or at least investigate that what are all the areas that are involved in the game of the governance, because it's not only Power Platform team that can do something. This only comes in a small example is creating a pay-as-you-go plan for your Power Platform or Copilot Studio use cases. You need the Azure side to do that. And I've seen that this might take like days before we find someone on the Azure admin side that can help us to create the subscriptions and resource groups, etc. So everything is already connected. So in the future, when we are discussing about the agent governance, there's no silo or there's no agent governance team. It's a unified joint team from different admin center or different admin teams that should be working together actually.
I've seen the pain and the situation also that you need another team or another person to do some stuff. What would you suggest for the organizations? That should they have like one person who knows a bit everything and is part of all the teams, or what could be the structure handling this spaghetti?
I don't think there will be one person who is doing that. There is one person that is always needed, and this is the hardest part of governance, is to decide who is owning this one. And that owner should not be only from one side. The owner needs to understand the different teams and areas where the agent governance is actually happening. But there needs to be one owner, but then that owner cannot be the same person who knows everything and then does all the governance and processes and settings. You need a team for that. It's not a big team like tens of people. It might be 1 or 2 people who are working together, but it's the joint collaboration that you need to do.
You're absolutely right in this. I mean, there's one responsible person who has access to, as you already said, Microsoft 365 Admin Center, but also Power Platform Admin Center that gives you a lot of control, a lot of power, and you have to be very careful and very responsible. And I wish it would be on, on one place, but you're doing it in different places. Like in Power Platform Admin Center, you're configuring the DLPs. And then in Microsoft 365 Admin Center, now you're configuring, for example, which of the large language models shall appear. For example, the new ones from Anthropic. So one place would be very nice, but unfortunately, it's very fragmented.
It is still. Other example is that who can share a light agent to a whole organization. That's actually in M365 Admin Center. I don't know, have you noticed that my feeling currently is that there will be a shift in Power Platform side, how we are making the security controls in a half year or a year now. So we've been used to do things with the environment settings and DLP settings. But now we are starting to have these security settings in the actual settings side. So we are starting to implement those with the environment groups and have making settings and governance controls in environment group level or using a different tools. So let's see where we are. But at least if you don't have DLP set on in Power Platform at the moment, that should be your priority in one way currently. So those needs to be set up. But what we've seen is actually the Copilot Studio side is that we have started to use the manage environments and control settings throughout those capabilities a lot more than earlier, because it's the most convenient way of having the control and governance built in for masses in one way. And those are included in the Copilot Studio licensing. So you should really use those. Although maybe you haven't been using those before, but now you should check out that what settings there is.
Today, I will not really deep dive into licensing, because if I open this box of Pandora, I think we can just talk about 1 hour. But this is question number one every time when I'm discussing with clients. I see time is not our friend, so let me use the rest of the time and just go into the very last topic, which barely someone is really talking about. So the rollout. So what is your strategy for a rollout, for a successful one? And what are the measurements to say, yes, this agent is successful?
Yeah. So first of all, it starts with the lifecycle management and thinking through that how the process and how the publishing pipelines is done. And you should really use the tools that you have. So no manual work there, hopefully. But in one way, the same type of principles and steps that you are using already with the applications should actually be built in when you are publishing these agents. So have first group or first phase where a certain amount of people is starting to use the agents. You don't have to spend too much time for the first phase, but you will get a lot more information and understanding of the real use cases out of that type of testing business. I hope that in some point we would have a better way of publishing an agent to a certain test group. Because if you have been working with the pipelines or making this type of testing with the different versions, it's really hard, because then the tester might have two same titled agents shown in the agent or application pane. That might be hard, but still you use the time of having the first group and only then onboard the next ones. And don't be afraid of making some type of queries for your end users, that how do they see in real life that the agent is working. You might see that also from the logs that, okay, no one is now discussing with the agent. Maybe you see that what type of conversations did they have, but most likely you don't understand that why the user didn't come back to have the conversation or continue the conversation. You should spend a little bit time around that also to really understand that why maybe they are using the agent or why they are not using the agent. So those are maybe the steps that we are currently taking.
So if you need to wrap up, what would be your suggestions that how would organization would start like that? What are the 3 key points to put attention into when you are building the agent? If you don't have anything, or if you have, for example, Power Platform governance model, but nothing else.
Yeah, so like I said, start by discussing with your businesses. That's where the knowledge and understanding of possible places and use cases is. So, and building an agent in one way, I think it's not a work for IT, because then the approach is always somehow technical. So the good thing with Copilot Studio is that many of the technical burden and technical things are already taken care of for you by Microsoft when they are, giving you this platform. Behind the scenes, there are Azure OpenAI services, etc. So you don't have to worry about that, the infrastructure. But put like all your effort to understand the process where the agent will be working, and take your time on the planning side, but also in the rapid development and the constant improving for the solution. Because I think you need to be brave on creating the agent, and don't be afraid, because in the default settings, the agent is only capable of reading that information that the end user has. Okay, don't use non-authenticated setting for the agent, but in one way, it only can do what the normal people can do already at this day, but it's then only using an LLM to help during that process.
It can be framed this episode as pray for your Copilot agent. That would be really great, I would say. So, but I mean, on point, AI cannot do any magic. It's your knowledge and your energy just putting in to still make it work, like our clients are expecting it.
Yeah, of course you can misconfigure things and something can happen, but most of the cases where we see that, okay, now something insecure has happening, it's not the agent that is doing that. It's a misconfiguration in the data source that has been there maybe already years, but the power of the LLM is able to find that. And this is another topic and another episode, I think, where you need to start thinking about the pure view and DLPs in general in your Office or Microsoft chat.
Awesome. Well, it was a really pleasure, Mikko, to have you as our first guest on the show. So thank you very much for your insight. It was really brilliant to listen to you, to a genius like you.
Yeah, really nice discussion and really interesting topic. And I'm sure in the next episodes there will be a lot more, maybe deeper, discussion around this, even on the agent building and everything, around it. Thank you so much.
Carl and I make it happen. Don't worry about this. Thank you very much, Mikko.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
The Microsoft ecosystem is evolving faster than ever. Copilot, Power Platform, security, modern work, Azure AI, new features every week, new opportunities every day. But learning is scattered. Events are expensive, limited, and difficult to access. That changes now. Welcome to M365Con, the world's largest online Microsoft 365 convention. 2 powerful weeks, 1 week of workshops, 1 week of free global talks and keynotes. Build your own learning path with expert-led workshops. From Power Platform to security, from Copilot to Azure AI, you choose what matters to you. Then join over 60 free sessions with most valuable professionals, Microsoft trainers, architects, and innovators from around the world. Meet the community, explore the virtual expo, connect with experts, and be part of a global Microsoft experience. Accessible, global, interactive, and designed for every Microsoft 365 professional. M365Con, your community, your learning path, your Microsoft 365 future.